Now, without further delay, let me introduce Dave Ulrich to you. Dave Ulrich is the Rensis Likert Professor of Business at the Ross School of Business and a partner at the RBL Group. He's published over 200 articles and book chapters and over 25 books. Dave has honors and awards too numerous to mention, but notably he has received a Lifetime Achievement Award from HR Magazine for being the father of modern human resources, and in 2015 was ranked as the #1 most influential HR thought leader of the last decade by HR Magazine. At this time, I would like to turn our webinar over to Dave. I will be advancing the slides for Dave, and Dave, take it away.
Outstanding. Christine, thank you very much. And I'll go to the cover slide. And thanks to those who've taken time to attend. I know you're either real time or other time, and I can also imagine that if you're like me, you're probably trying to multitask while you listen. So I hope that I don't disrupt too much the important other things that you're doing. But good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. And as Christine said, we're honored for those who've attended Michigan, especially the great group from HCA. What a wonderful company, and some incredible, exceptional HR leaders that have done great work there. So on the cover slide, you see kind of the background. I've been a professor at the Ross School for longer than most of you have been born, since the 80s, and I'm honored to still teach there. And you see on that slide, if you take a note, my email if people have questions. So slide 2. I am passionate about creating value. And I'm going to talk about what that means today, but I'm going to start with a very simple question. If you're in a room with other people, look at them and raise your fingers, 0 to 10, how much value do I create? If you're in a room by yourself, and you're probably don't need to do that for yourself, but just ask yourself, how much value do I create? And I'm leaving that very open-ended, because I want to talk with you today about what do we know that HR people can do to create value. And I'm going to tell stories and give some ideas. And how can I create more? That's the agenda for the discussion today. I'm going to give you 7 tips for those who've been at our programs. I hope these are reinforcement of what we've done, and I hope they're new. We try to create 20 to 25% new material every year and a half or so, and we hope to see you in our programs where we go into more depth on this. So 0 to 10, how much value do I create? Slide 3. We write a lot of stuff. We write a ton of books. I'm going to talk more about the book at the top right. Lately, I've been posting more on LinkedIn and post every Tuesday. I hope you're following some of that. You'll get invited to. Page 4, slide 4. I got 7 points. How do I create value? Point number 1, I recognize that value is defined by the receiver more than the giver. Value is not what I do. It's what somebody gets from what I do. This session, the value of this next 40 minutes is not what I say, it's what you as the receiver get from what I say. That concept of value, slide 5, has huge implications for the individual. Again, if I give my wife or my children a gift, I don't define the value of that gift, they do. This morning, our daughter just wrote a very clever blog about women and women's roles. I decided to provide her value by forwarding her blog to a lot of people. I'm really worried. That may not be what she intended. She may have just wanted that to be shared with me. She defines the value of the gift. When I have an interaction, they define the value. That applies to leadership. In leadership, we'd love to talk about authenticity. Leaders who are authentic but not creating value for other people tend to be, frankly, narcissists. Because they're creating value for themselves. It's not, I'm a billionaire. It's, did I create 1,000 millionaires? And value is not about me. I was coaching a man, and I've shared this before, who was brilliant. The head of finance of a large global company. And I interviewed him and his subordinates and his boss and his peers, and sat down and I said, you're brilliant. You understand the business, you understand finance, you understand where we're going. And he said, thank you, thank you, thank you. But I said to him, you don't listen very well. And he interrupted me. And he said, I listen fine. And I said, you just interrupted me. You're not listening to me. And we talked for a minute. And I finally said, look, you have 20 IQ points on me. What does listening mean? And he said, listening means that I understand. And I said, my dear friend, you're so smart, but you're wrong on this. Listening is not that you understand, but that the other person feels understood. And he said, say that again. Listening is not that you understand, but that the other person feels understood. And he said, I don't understand. And I said, that's right. That's why I'm coaching you. Value's not what I do. It's what somebody gets what I do from what I do. HR. We've run HR programs at Michigan and through our consulting firm. After a recent program, somebody went home and was so excited and energized, and we hope we energize you at the University of Michigan, and if possible in July, or another program that we offer. And he said, I identified 18 emerging HR practices in staffing and training and compensation and org design. And I did a survey of my business leaders. How do you feel about these practices? And I got lousy response. They didn't answer. They didn't care. And I said to this man, oh, have we failed you? We spent time training you, but we goofed. It's not about the HR practice. It's about the value that it creates for other people. The survey you should be doing is, what does your business need to do to win? What does your business need to do to win? Is it innovation? Is it customer service? Is it global expansion? Is it speed to market? And then HR enables that victory. Values defined by the receiver, not what we do, but what somebody gets. Same with organization and same with work we've done in some great countries. Values not what we do, it's what somebody gets from what we do. Next slide. So of my 7 points, somebody asked me this week in a session I was doing, so what of these 7 points, which is the most critical? And I have to confess that I think on slide 6, the first one is, if I don't think about value in terms of what somebody gets, all of the practices become moot, because my job is not to go do new things. My job is to do new things that help other people get better. In HR, this is not new news. It's not what we do, it's what we deliver. The HR scorecard that I ended up writing with great colleagues in the 90s is a horrible book today, because it's not about the HR scorecard. It's about the impact of the HR activities on the business scorecard. As Dick Beatty, who teaches in our programs at Michigan, says so eloquently, the scorecard of HR is the business. So number 1, values defined by the receiver. Number 2, so who are our stakeholders? Slide 7. If I was with you, I'd have you actually jot down on slide 7, who are the customers or stakeholders of HR? For whom do we create value? It's an interesting question, because I think there's a mindset in HR that we create value primarily for employees. They're our customers. Slide 8. Let me tell you our point of view that I think is fundamentally different and shifts the agenda for HR. If on slide 7 you thought about the employees as who we create value for, or the managers of the organization, that's below the line on slide 8. We create value for employees. They're competent, they're committed. We create value for the line managers. We build an organization, we build a culture. Our view is that we also have to create value above the line. Value above the line is so critical. Are we creating value for customers? Does what we do in HR cause a customer to buy more, to have a better relationship with our firm? Are we creating value for investors? We've done a lot of work on leadership capital and some fascinating stuff, that the value of leadership is not that we have better leaders, it's that those leaders build confidence in the investor marketplace. Are we creating value in the communities where we live, with the partners and the networks where we operate? Our job in HR is to create value not only below the line, but also above the line. And it's in that creation of value for all of those stakeholders that become critical. We think this is a profound difference, and I'll talk about it as we go through the discussion. On slide 8, or on slide 9, I'm sorry. Let me just give some very quick examples. In staffing, some of the HR tools, we don't just want to be the employer of choice, we want to be the employer of choice of employees our customers would choose. When we go to hire somebody, when we go to promote somebody, are we putting the person in the job who will best serve our customers and make sure that they get value? Training. Are we involving customers in designing, delivering our training programs? Because the goal of training is not that our employees have more skills, it's that they have skills so that our customers have more value. Performance management. There's a lot of debate about performance management. Should we do away with it or not? Which is in some ways a really silly debate. If you don't have any accountability, people aren't going to change very well. I've tried to lose weight by not weighing, and if you've looked at me lately, it's not working. You gotta have performance management standards. Well, are we keeping those standards that customers care about? Don't do a 360, do a 720, get the customers involved. Do we involve customers in establishing our reward system, allocating bonuses, communication, leadership? On this slide 9, everything we do in HR can be through the filter of outside in with customers. Now, I should also argue on page 9 that I could change customer with investor. The investor may be a parent company if I'm in a global market. The investor may be a debt holder if I'm a startup company funded through debt, or it could be an equity holder if I'm funded through the financial markets. Are we hiring, training, performance management, rewards with customers in mind and investors? Slide 10. How can I create more value? Number 1, value is defined by the receiver. I get a definition or a mindset of what it is. Number 2, value creation includes internal employees, clearly. Somebody said once, well, you don't care about the employee. Well, that's just wrong. We care deeply about the employee. But if we don't create value for the customer and have a firm that's viable, there's no value left for the employee. We have to create great employee experiences, but we have to create winning customer and investor experiences, because if they don't win, there's no there for the employee. So with those two things in mind, let me set up a context around this third one. Assume that there's a business meeting, and at the table in this business meeting, our friend Gordon Hewitt calls it an away day, but in this business meeting, the general manager is at the head of the table, and she or he says, here's our strategy. We're going to win through innovation. We're going to compete in global markets. We're going to tailor our products and services to these customers. Around the table sit some of the functional experts. What do they each bring to the table? Finance. A good financial officer brings economic data, financial data, capital allocation disciplines. How do we invest to win? Marketing. A good marketing head brings customer insights, not just current, but future customers, anticipatory customers. Through the digital technology that we have, we can identify those customers. A good operations person brings discipline around the supply chain, the operations, the manufacturing, the inventory turns, the risk management if you're in a bank. So I'm in HR. What do I bring to that discussion? Everybody wants analytics and data. Great HR has always depended on great data. That's not a new idea. But it's what do we bring data around? We are invited to the table. What is the data we bring? Well, let me go to slide 11. And again, if you're in a room with other people, I'm going to have you do an exercise. One option we bring is the individual data. I bring data around talent, competence, workforce, people, engagement, retention, productivity. Or the other option is organizational data. I bring data about our culture, our capability, our workplace, our processes, how we work as a team. So if you're in a room with somebody else, on your left hand, hold up 5 fingers and move them around. So look at somebody and just go, whoa, there's my 5 fingers. That's the individual. Your right hand is a fist, closed. That's the organization. If you're in a room with other people, or if you're in a room by yourself, you can do this, only nobody will notice. Which one matters more? The 5 fingers as individual or the fist as organization? Or if you choose, how would you divide 10 points? I've done that exercise now for the last 6 or 8 months. And what I usually find in groups of HR, I did it this week with a group of about 400, about 65% talent individual. They hold up the 5 fingers. About 35 to 40% say it's more the organization. Well, you know what? We've done research. Here's what we found. Successful businesses who win in the marketplace, it's 80-20 organization. 80-20 organization. Now, let me think with you just a minute. So when I walk into this business meeting, finance talks about economic data, marketing talks about customer data, operations about systems data. Do I bring data around talent? Absolutely. The engagement survey, the retention, the productivity. Should I also bring data about organization, our agility, our collaboration, our culture? And the answer is yes. In fact, that organization data has more impact on business results than does the individual data. So, slide 12. Here's what we've discovered. And again, one of my my background, for those who don't know, is I was trained as a numerical taxonomist, and it's not taxidermy, it's not stuffing animals, it's a taxonomist who looks for patterns in complexity and tries to find simplicity. Well, here's my simple answer. Whenever HR is in a meeting, and by the way, 20 years ago, we pleaded to be invited to the table. I think 15 years ago, we got invited. I think now we've been part of the business for a long time. What is it we say to contribute? And I think on slide 12, there's three things. Do we have the right talent? Do we have the right culture, organization? And do we have the right leadership? If we were having you leave one thing from our program or from this webinar or our program at Michigan in any business agenda, and when we start our program, we start with strategy with a great session by Bill Joyce, who defines the changing world. We ask three questions in that new strategic world. Do we have the right strategy, or do we have the right talent, the right culture, organization, and the right leadership? Those three questions are critical. And here's what we have found about them. Slide 13. Football. Soccer. What percent of time is the leading scorer on the team that wins the Golden Cup? The World Cup. The World Cup is starting, and again, that will date this seminar. It's starting in Russia this week or next week. Will your team win? Will you have the best player in the tournament? And the answer is 20%. 20% of the time, the Golden Boot, the person who scores the most goals, is on the team that wins the World Cup. 80% of the time, it's teamwork. That's true in every team sport. I happen to follow basketball. 20% of the time, the leading scorer in the NBA is on the team that wins the championship. We'll see if that happens this year. Australian football, it's true. Hockey, it's true. Ice hockey, it's true. Slide 13. The same pattern is true in movies. What percent of the time is the best actor or actress in the movie that wins the movie of the year? And the answer is 20%. And you can see the last 10 movies of the year. 20% of the time in King's Speech, the actor Colin Firth was also in the movie of the year, the King's Speech. But mostly, it's not the actor or actress, it's the ensemble that makes it work. Okay, so what does this mean? When we walk into a meeting, and Christine, I'm going to go back real quick to slide 12, if we could. Whenever there's a business meeting, there's three things we talk about: talent, leadership, and culture. And if we can bring value to those things, we succeed. Now, let me jump ahead to slide 15. In talent, what do we talk about? Competence, do we have the right skills? Commitment, do we have the right engagement? And contribution. Now, again, I said before, all of these things should be focused on customers. Do we have the competence to serve customers? Do we have the commitment to serve customers? And in contribution or well-being or growth mindset, we're trying to increase the sentiment or engagement of the employee. Slide 16. Let me just give an example of where we see some of that headed. In the work that we've seen around employee engagement and commitment, we started with satisfaction. Do I like my boss? My working conditions. We've then moved stage 2 to commitment. Does my boss give me skills to do my job? We're now moving into a new age called meaning and purpose. Does my boss allow me to achieve the purpose that matters in my life? And I think we're moving to stage 4. Some great work by Marshall Goldsmith is highlighted on slide 17. In front of your engagement surveys, ask the question, did I do my best? Did I do my best to set goals? Did I do my best to make progress? Did I do my best to find meaning? Did I do my best to work with and learn from my boss? When we have active engagement, that employee is more committed and engaged in the firm. And again, that leads to customer outcomes. The purpose of engagement is not just to get employees to have well-being. It's to have employees who have well-being so that the customer well-being is related to it. Talent is a key factor for creating value. Slide 18, so is culture. This morning I had a conversation with the CEO of an incredibly successful bank. I don't have his approval, so I won't name it. It's an incredibly successful bank that grown dramatically. And he says, after 10 to 20 years of growth, we need to renew our culture. And I said, what is culture? And his answer on slide 18 was our values. He said, we have a mission. We want to grow. We want to be a dominant bank. We have a vision. This is why we're here. Our values or beliefs are who we are, what we believe. And he said, I should renew our culture. And I said, here's where cultural renewal starts. On slide 18, it starts with the brand. In order for us to grow as a company, what do we want to be known for by our best customers or other stakeholders? What's the identity we're probing in the marketplace? Remember this outside-in logic. Culture is then the integration of the values and the brand. It's not about values alone. Values are internal beliefs. They're critical things. They're critical. And the metaphor of culture is you have a giant tree with deep roots. Culture is the roots. Yes, it is. But that's not where we should focus culture going forward. The roots anchor us. The leaves enable us to grow. And if we can create culture that integrates the values of who we've been and the brand of who we need to become to serve customers, we become known for something that's powerful. In the program at Michigan and elsewhere, we work on building the right culture, and then you can see the culture change process. This for us is such a key feature. Culture is getting a lot of attention. A year or two ago is the word of the year in the dictionary. How do we build that culture? Slide 19. Same thing. Culture is not an event. It's not even a pattern. It's an identity. And then the third thing we deliver on slide 20 is leadership. What is it leaders know and do? Why leadership matters to customers, to investors. We are finding, for example, that 25 to 30% of the investor confidence in a firm's future, its intangible value, is tied to leadership. We don't build leadership competence models to make leaders better. They're better so that investors give us money and value. What does good leadership look like? How do you build leadership? How do you become a better leader? Just to give you a flavor of that on slide 21, we have a model of leadership called Leadership Code. It's from work Kate Sweetman, Norm Smallwood, and I did about 10 years ago. In our Michigan program, we've updated that. Here's the summary of what's next in leadership and what we can do to begin to create leadership. And I won't bore you with that, but it's fascinating about what we in HR can do. Okay, let me go to slide 22. I realize I'm covering probably 2.5 of the 10-day program at Michigan in 45 minutes, and I'm going very fast and giving you kind of it's as if you were in a food tasting business, and I'm giving you a quick smorgasbord of ideas. But how do I create more value? Number one, it's a receiver. Number two, it's multiple stakeholders. Number three, talent, leadership, and organization. Number four, use digital HR. Every few years in HR, there's another significant movement. Analytics, we've got to do it. Millennials, we've got to do it. Performance reviews, we've got to build that in. Quality circles, if you go back far enough. Today, the issue is digital. I think in HR, we create much more value at digital. Now, let me go to slide 23 and give you an overview of what I think that means, again, in my spirit of gross simplicity. On slide 23, on the left-hand side, we can start by saying digital is about technology, artificial intelligence, robots, chatbots, Internet of Things, blockchain. I just saw a nice piece on what blockchain can do. That list goes on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, remember, value is we win in the marketplace. We increase our customer share, our investor conference, our capabilities, our employee. So what's the connection? And in yellow in the middle on slide 23 is digital. Remember, all digital is a form of information. I was at this talk yesterday with about 400 people, or day before yesterday, How many have an analog wristwatch? And we do. The hands move, they go around, they give you analog data. How many have a digital wristwatch? The Apple phone, the Samsung phone. I have a Timex wristwatch. Digital information allows us to make better decisions. Most of the technology on slide 23 on the left, robots, cloud data, uses digital information to make decisions about how we win. That's it. Sometimes we get just lost in the complexity of digital information. It's information that helps us win. So what does HR do? And on slide 23, we do two things. Number one, we support the business's digital agenda. And number two, we use digital HR to build our agenda. Slide 24. By the way, I'm talking about this more on May 29th, I think, is the conference with the HR Congress, where we're going to go into detail about building this agenda. I get excited. What can we in HR do to build a business's agenda? And the business agenda is happening everywhere. Automotive is changing with the driverless car. Financial estate is changing with distributed access to financial services. Lodging with Airbnb. The data about where you stay and how you stay. Education. This is in part a digital agenda through this kind of webinar. We are changing the way we work. So what does HR do to help build a digital agenda? Number one, we build a business case. Nobody knows more about building the rationale for an agenda than HR. Number two, we create a team. The digital business agenda is not IT, it's not finance, it's not operations. It's a team of people who come together. We in HR know how to build and operate teams. Number three, we get clear about the outcomes. My goodness, who in the organization knows more about outcomes than HR? We do performance, we do standards. We know how to build outcomes of the digital agenda. Number four, we audit our digital capacity. Who knows more about leadership audits, organizational audits, cultural audits? Have we led an audit or facilitated an audit of the digital agenda? And finally, we craft a digital plan. We know a lot about making plans that work. We can help the business build its agenda. Slide 25. In HR, I think there's 4 phases of digitization. And this is a hot topic, and you're going to get a lot of comments. Phase 1 and phase 2 are the dominant focus of HR today. Digital is about HR efficiency through incredible technology applications and platforms. I list Oracle, SAP, Workday, there are others. Phase 2 is the incredible innovation of new ideas for staffing and training and compensation and communication. Almost every day I get a new idea about how the latest digital HR application will reinvent the world and help us win. I think we've got to go to phase 3, which Wayne Brockbank, who teaches at our Michigan program, is a brilliant expert at, is around managing data and information. And I think we got to go to phase 4. I hope in the HR space to create real value, we use digital information to connect people, to help people feel a social belonging, a social experience. And let me just go a bit deeper as to why I think that matters. Slide 26. What causes mortality? And again, I've got 6 or 7 things listed here. If you're in a group, it would be fun to have you circle. Is it high blood pressure, high cholesterol, inactivity, social isolation, drinking, obesity, depression? Now, obviously, the diseases are cancer, diabetes, but what are the heart disease? What causes these diseases that lead to mortality? And I could add age, smoking more than 15 cigarettes a day. The answer is D, social isolation. In fact, on slide 27, you can see the U.S. Surgeon General recently stated that loneliness is more serious health problem than opiates. Now, and the reason is loneliness becomes a driver of opiate use. It becomes a driver of some of these other dysfunctions. The number of Americans with no friends has tripled since 1985. In the UK, they've just named a minister of loneliness. I think one of the issues that we should find technology to help with is the management of relationships. And relationships on slide 28 matter. One of the great studies over, I can't remember how long, I think this is 60 years at Harvard, is the importance of relationships and social connections. And I won't take you through this, but the quality of our relationships and the quality of our connections are the things that enable us to succeed. Now, why do we talk about this? Mostly not mostly, but to a great extent, technology today is not fostering relationships. It's isolating people. Go onto a college campus at Michigan. We hope to see you there. You can go on your own and look at the students. They have headphones. They come to a class. They put on headphones. They're locked in. You see the people. I was wandering through the airport last night. What percent of people walk with their mind into the cell phone? I was looking. There was a line to get through check-in, and there were about 20 people in line to check in. What percent were on their cell phone while they were standing there? Probably 70, 80%. Now, some of that is building relationships, but what we're finding is that the more time on FaceTime, the more time on chat room box, the more cellular technology enabled connections, the lower morale, the lower life satisfaction. How do we use technology to build belonging and connections? Slide 29. I'll just capture this again. HR should create value in the digital age. On the left-hand slide of 29, we help the business's digital agenda. I know we have a lot of people here from healthcare. Healthcare is incredibly powerful, and it's an area where digitization is dominating. We see remote diagnoses. We see the preventive medicine. I'm wearing right now a wristband to track my healthcare. We see the Apple Watch tracking your oxygenation and your health and how you're doing. I just bought one of those little bands that I put on my finger to track my my oxygen and my health, to see how I'm doing and to monitor it. And digitization is such a key part of managing any business today. Actually, I just looked. My oxygen is 96. My pulse rate is 64. I am in such great shape. I'm not excited enough doing this seminar. That's not possible. We in HR enable the business agenda, but on the right-hand side, we use digital HR to help the organization. And back to HCA, some of the work I saw at HCA was so powerful that the nurse station and the relationship between the nurse and his or her patients becomes a key. Can we use technology to enable that connection? The word I've written about and have papers, if you want copies of them, is belonging and meaning. And how do we create that sense of belonging and meaning? Slide 30. Whoa, catch your breath. We've got 3 more to go through in about 10 minutes. How do I create more value? We've set the tone. It's the receiver. We've understood the stakeholders, number 2. We've looked at what we deliver, talent, leadership, and organization. We've used digital to manage information and do it better. Now do we have, in number 5, the right HR department? Have we created an HR department that allows us to win? Again, there's been an enormous amount of work around how do we structure and organize HR. Slide 31. I'll put that work into 4 bullet points, and the details we hope you'll come get as you come to Michigan. The message is on slide 31, you run the HR department almost like it's a business within a business. Number 1, we separate the foundational work from the strategic work. What work is foundational? By the way, one of the trends here is, I think 20, 25 years ago, and we did a book called Outsourcing HR, where you'd outsource the service center work, and you'd have centers in Pakistan, in India, in Eastern Europe. Today, through digital and automated information, that work is coming back into companies. Number 2, our HR structure should be structured the way we structure the business. If a business is centralized, we should centralize HR. If a business is decentralized, like Tata, Unilever tends to be more decentralized. Berkshire Hathaway, Danaher, decentralize the business. Number 3, most large businesses today are multi-divisional firms. They're matrices, they have multiple divisions. We see that evolving in some of the work we're doing around new kinds of organization, but that's where we're headed. And that's where the centers of expertise, service centers, and how we work together to make that happen. But aside all of that, number 4, I think the key to an HR department is the relationships. We talk about, many of us have done what's called RACI, responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. Um, I've been in a relationship with my wife for over 40 years. I don't think once we've ever sat down and formally gone through, here's our decisions, here's our RACI model. We have a relationship. Boy, this morning the dishwasher needed to be emptied. Now you're welcome to my really exciting life. My wife was out walking. I had a few minutes, so I emptied the dishwasher. This afternoon, my wife has a meeting, so she's going to stop by the store and do some shopping. You know, we don't have this formal, you do this at this time of day. We have relationships because we trust each other. We know how each other works. We have a sense of community. That's what we have to have within HR. We need to get roles clear. Number one, we need to follow the business logic. Number two, number three, we need to make sure we have the right governance logic, but ultimately we have to build relationships. And on slide 32, we have discovered there's some keys to a great relationship. This comes out of the marriage research. My wife's a psychologist and has enabled me to attend some workshops with John Gottman and some other leading therapists who've really done great research, diligent research over decades. What makes a healthy relationship? Look at this as your contract within HR. Do we share a common purpose? Do we respect differences? Are we more positive than negative? Do we manage expectations? We're not going to solve every issue in a relationship, nor will we in HR, but we have decision rights. Do we care for each other? Are we so excited that when somebody else succeeds, that their success is our success? Do we share experiences? Do we respond to bids? In a good relationship, 80 to 90% of bids are responded to. And are we learning and growing together? Now you could add to this list, but this is what we know that makes a great relationship. Slide 33. Whoa, how do I create value? I've got the context, I've got the tools, I've got the disciplines, I've got the department. Now, number 6, we've got to have great HR competencies. Value means I, as an individual HR professional, have the ability to make a difference. On slide 34, we have some assumptions about HR competence. It's an integrating factor, and it's not the competencies. I see a lot of groups creating competency models. Here's our 10 competencies. Here's the 6 competencies of HR. We're more interested in, will they deliver outcomes? Same is true in leadership. It's not about the competence, it's about the outcomes that the competence delivers. That's that whole value is defined by the receiver logic. The other thing we've learned is that you can't measure your self-report. When we measure self-report, we judge ourselves by our intent. And finally, we've learned that competencies change. We've been involved at Michigan, and I'll share the research in 2 slides, not now. Over 30 years, 7 rounds of data collection at looking at competencies and their impact for HR professionals. I think we know what it is that HR people should know and do to make a difference. And we see about 30 to 40% change in competencies every 4 or 5 years. If you're building a competence model or trying to get a competence model that works, and that model has not been updated, you're probably out of date because the model needs to be continually updated with what we do. Now on slide 35, here's the model that drives what we do at the Michigan program. We're starting in July. I think it's July. Christine can answer that later. Actually, participants will get a 360. They'll find out how they're doing. We have data now from 30,000 people. What does it take to be a good HR professional? And you can get a benchmark around specific HR skill sets that will allow you to know how you've succeeded. Now on slide 35, it's in the book Victory Through Organization. We discovered out of 123 items, there were 9 key domains of effective competence. I'm really sorry, I'm sitting in an office with the phone ringing. So welcome to the multitasking world we live in, and it will stop in just a minute. These are the 9 buckets of competence that we see HR professionals requiring. So what has the impact? What has most impact? In the middle, you see 3 in a different color. Credible activist. Here's the impact of being a credible activist. You get invited to the table. That's what HR has been trying to do for 20 years. People try to reinvent that we should be invited to the table. Yes, we should be invited. We should be part of the business. We are part of the business. What are the skills at a personal level that get me invited? But what we found is that doesn't mean I'm creating value. Strategic positioner in blue is not just knowing the business, but being able to position the business to win. That's exciting. Can I help the business win? And what we found is if I can help the business win by knowing how we make money, serving customers, investors, knowing the context, I can create value for the customers and investors of my company. But if we want to deliver business results, it's the navigation of paradox in black in the middle. Paradox is the inherent tension between two things. Should we be long-term or short-term? Yes. Top-down, bottom-up? Yes. Focused on our history or future? Yes. Worried about individuals or teams? Yes. Zoom out, zoom in. Diversity? Yes. Inclusion? Yes. How do we manage all of those tensions? Because when a company navigates those tensions, I made a mistake. It's not manage them, it's navigate them. When you can navigate those tensions, you create businesses that have agility and win. Slide 36 just captures some of that and the results. Slide 37, I'm going to spend just a minute on, and we'll have questions in about 2 minutes. Here's what's fun about being at a university and doing research, especially longitudinal research. By the way, the other university that does some of this is Southern California, but they don't get into the competencies quite the way we have. The work that John Boudreau and Ed Lawler and their colleagues have done is also outstanding, as is work by Pat Wright. We think the collective work in the HR field is phenomenal. We hope we at Michigan are partners in creating that future. But on slide 37, I've had people come up to me and say, oh, HR is terrible. There's no progress. They're just terrible. Here's the data. It's impossible to get it all. Round one is the second column, and you look down there, it's got a 3.17. That was in 1987. With 10,000 people, HR people scored 3.17 out of 5 and how well they knew the business. Now follow that arrow over to round 7, 2016 and 17, our last study, 4.13. Now notice we've changed the definition from business knowledge to strategic positioner, but the HR field has made a 1 point increase. We're just finishing a survey for a very big client, and they're seeing changes in 0.1 and 0.15 as dramatic shifts. A 1.0 shift. HR people know the business today better than ever. Delivery of HR, 3.33 in round one. It was a very different model. Today, on the right-hand column on slide 37, knowing HR has lots of pieces, it's 4.02, a 0.7 increase. Managing change from 365 to managing culture and change to 4.0. Personal credibility also up. Here's the message. To those who come to me and say, HR people are terrible, they're making no progress, my comment is, I'm so sorry. For some reason, you have not had the experience most of the field is having. HR in general is making incredible progress. And what's even more incredible is the expectations have gone up. So we're not expected to do what we did in 1987. We're expected to know and do more, and we're still meeting that bar. And finally, on slide 38, make line managers the owners. This is one of my favorite questions on slide 39. An exam question: who has accountability and responsibility for HR? A, the line manager, B, the head of HR, C, it's shared, D, I don't care, I'm going into finance, or E, the consultant. The answer is not C, it's shared. The primary accountability on slide 39 is the owner. And almost everything we do, our job in HR is to enable. And you see on slide 39, we architect, we coach, we design, we facilitate. We enable line managers to be the stewards, the owners of talent, leadership, and organization. My goodness, I have covered a lot of material. Let me go back to a slide, Christine, if we could, to slide 38. 0 to 10, how much value do I create? I don't know what your score was going in, and I don't know what I have to do to create more. I've given you 7 tips. Focus on the receiver, number 1. Number 2, That receiver is both inside the company and outside, customers, investors. Number 3, deliver talent, organization, and I'd add leadership. Number 4, get ahead of the digital age, shape the business agenda, and deliver an HR agenda around connection. Number 5, manage the relationships of a great HR department. Number 6, use my competencies in HR to get better and build my competencies. That's why we're doing these programs. We want HR people to have the skills to make a difference. And finally, number 9, make the line managers owners. If I could just go to slide 40, we hope you'll come to our Michigan programs and join us more. That's a picture of me that obviously the weight loss program is not fully working. And then slide 41, I hope you'll join me with LinkedIn. We'll probably invite you to do some of that and share ideas. I'm posting every Tuesday. The post yesterday or Tuesday, 2 days ago, was on learning agility, not learning agility, agility at the strategic organization, individual, and HR level. We keep trying to learn, and we want to learn with you as we go forward. Okay, Christine, well, I'm going to turn it back to you. You'll probably go to slide 42 and see what questions we've got. I'm impressed. We've had about a 99% stay rate of those who've attended, which is just remarkable. Now, some of that is most of you are probably multitasking, so you're getting other work done, or I put you to sleep, so you're resting well. But with that in mind, Christine, let me send it back to you.
Thank you so much, Dave. It's really a pleasure to hear your thoughts, and we want to now hear from some of the participants. If anybody has any questions, you can send those via chat. But let's get started with one that I have right here, which is, Dave, can you talk more about the skills that are mandatory for HR professionals as we move towards being more strategic business partners with the leadership?
You bet. Included, I'm going to answer that in 2 ways. Included in this webinar are 4 documents. And Christine, have people been able to download those or they can access them?
Well, we have 2. One is the Business Partner 2.0, and then Ideas with Impact. If there's more, then I can include those in the
the other
email.
2 are the slides and then the
Oh, yeah.
Ross program.
Yep.
So
Very good. Yep.
So if you're listening, one of the posts I did was Business Partner 2.0. Here's what I was finding. People were saying, I really dislike business partner ideas. And they were looking at what we did in 1997 as the model for the business partner in 2017. Well, in 1997, the business partner model that we wrote in HR Champions, the Motorola flip phone was the phone of the year. Well, that's nothing close to Samsung or Apple's iPhone, the smartphone. The business partner model has changed. In that paper, I list 13 changes in the business partner model over the last 20 years. Those begin to be the skills that HR people need to master to succeed. For example, 20 years ago, we didn't really talk as much about navigating paradox. Paradoxes were there, but they weren't being articulated as a skill set. In the Michigan program, now we get into paradox. We weren't talking about using information as an analytical tool for data. Wayne Brockbank does a brilliant job talking about analytics. Well, Dick Beatty talks about analytics. Wayne talks about information and the ways to use both structured and unstructured information. So if you have a chance to pull out of the webinar, that paper, there's 13 shifts in the HR space. I just hit 7 of them where we should get skills. Now, having said that, it's we're doing this webinar now in 2018. In 2019, I don't even know what the next ones will be, but there'll be more because we're constantly trying to learn to make a difference. And now, specifically, if I look at skills, credible activist skill set gets you in the room. Strategic positioner skill set lets you serve customers and investors, and navigating paradox allows you to create business results. That's what we found.
Okay, terrific. And just to reiterate, yes, we do have 4 handouts. They will all be sent post-webinar in an email. So there's 2 white papers from Dave, his PowerPoint presentation, as well as a brochure about the Advanced Human Resource Executive Program. So let's go over to another question. This one is coming from Nancy Vitale. Thank you, Nancy. Can you say more about the concepts of organization agility you mentioned and how to enable a more agile HR organization?
My first comment is agility in some ways, and I really struggled with this the last few months. It's getting a lot of attention, and it's a little bit old wine in new bottles. I mean, for those of us who've been around the OD and change field, um, change is not new. In fact, 40 years ago, when I did my exam for my PhD, you have to do an exam, then you do a thesis. I had to write for 24 hours about a topic. And one of the essays I wrote was when, why, and will OD. I thought it was a very clever 15-page essay in 24 hours. And my faculty advisor said, this is not the place to be clever. And I had the privilege of redoing my PhD exams. But OD, or org development, is a field that's been around, Nancy, for decades. What agility does is kind of combine 3 or 4 things. And there's a great book by Ed Lawler about agility. One, it combines issues of learning. It combines issues of change. It combines issues of technology that enables that digital information and learning to occur. And when you put those together, you begin to see that in the world that's changing, if we don't change as fast as the world around us, we immediately get lost and can never catch up. So I believe there's 4 levels of agility. One is strategic agility. Where are we going to play? How are we going to win? Look how rapidly the market changes. If I'm in a shopping mall, I'm in trouble because we're going to have to win, not by having shopping malls, but through online retail. If I'm in education, we win by having great courses at Michigan and elsewhere, but online education is coming. Every industry is going through strategic agility to adapt quickly to the market. Organizational agility. That's why I think values become incredibly important as the roots of the tree, but it's the branches of the tree and the growth that create agility and where we're going. Individual agility, learning agility is one of the key predictors of leadership success. The great work by Lominger Group that's part of Korn Ferry. Just incredible looking at learning and how leaders learn. And then finally, HR agility at 2 levels. Number 1, do we build practices that enable strategic, organizational, and individual agility? Do we help make that happen? And number 2, are we modeling agility in the work that we do? For example, an HR competence model. We've had 7 versions of our competence model over 30 years. Agility is a part of it. What we require of good leadership. I've just shown you briefly Leadership Code 2.0. Are we constantly updating recruiting? Are we using social media for recruiting? Are we using the latest and greatest techniques? So do we model agility in our function? Do we enable agility that drives strategic, organization, and individual? That's too long of an answer for a short time. I'm sorry.
Thanks so much, Dave. That's terrific. And I do have another question, but just let everybody know if your question does not get answered, we will be capturing those and then giving answers and providing that again in the email. So I have a question from Nadia Chubarova. Who is accountable for the culture shaping and rolling out? HR, the CEO, or all senior leadership team?
I'm going to be obnoxious. I think without CEO support and the senior leadership team, we talk about leaders versus leadership, you're going to have trouble. So I'd go, if I had 100 points across those 3 or 10 points, I'd probably go 6, 6, 2, and 2. I think maybe 5, 2, and 3. The senior leader is ultimately the one accountable and responsible.
Okay, great. And here is one from Ariane Espindola. She would like to know more about a fundamental point to start for the engagement from line managers to open space to hear HR as real business partners.
The first step is back to the first point that I made. HR is not about HR. It's about enabling line managers to reach the goals they have. So when HR comes into a meeting, we don't talk about HR. We listen to what the business is struggling with, and then we use HR to help make the business happen. My sense is sometimes in HR, we want line managers to be the experts on the latest trend in performance appraisal, succession planning, career planning, training. No, they don't have to be those experts. We should be the experts who use that expertise to enable the business.
Terrific. Well, Dave, thank you so much for your time today and sharing all of this wonderful thinking. We, of course, provide additional learning here at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business in our Advanced Human Resource Executive Program. So you can contact us for more information about that. On behalf of the Ross School of Business and Dave Ulrich, thank you so much for attending. And we hope to see you again, either here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, or on another webinar. Thanks again. Bye-bye.